Hello guys, welcome to Latte and Tea. This video is about a teenage girl who went missing. This is Sade Robinson's shocking true story and details law enforcement are still searching for. This story is not for the faint of heart. Sade Carleena Robinson was born May 10, 2004 till April 1st or 2nd, 2024. She was a 19-year-old college student who was reported missing in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on April 2, 2024. According to sources, a severed human leg was found in a nearby park later that day and subsequently determined by preliminary DNA testing to belong to Robinson. Other body parts were found in different locations later, and the search for remains continue. Sade's father, Carlos Robinson, said, "After the fact doesn't do him any justice because it doesn't bring his daughter back." Her father also said, "Why would this guy feel comfortable to tell Maxwell's plans in the first place?" Suspect Maxwell Anderson was arrested on April 4th and held in custody until he was formally charged on April 12th with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, arson, and accused of burning her car to hide evidence. Anderson's attorney argued the car arson should be tried separately, calling it a separate crime, but Crivello didn't agree. All of the evidence related to the arson is relevant to establishing motive, the motive to get away from the homicide and cause the mutilation underlying counts 1 and 2, Crivello said. While the primary focus of her decision was based on the incidents being essentially part of the same crime.
Appearance and murder.
Anderson's attorney argued that car arson should be tried separately, calling it a separate crime, but the judge didn't agree.
All of the evidence relating to the arson is relevant to establishing motive. The motive to get away from the homicide and to cause the mutilation underlying counts 1 and 2.
And so the judge's decision was based on the incidents essentially being part of the same crime. The judge also ruled having separate trials would unduly impact the victim's family, which is something she said she must consider.
It would be difficult, devastating, I would say, in order to have to be at 2 different trials. So severance of the charges in this case would serve to prolong the proceedings and would be contrary to the interests and rights of the victims.
Rejection of Anderson's motion keeps his December trial on target.
Robinson's mother and other relatives were in court for the motion hearing, but they didn't comment as they left the courthouse. Before Robinson's death, she and Anderson were seen going on a date at a seafood restaurant where he used to work. On the day of her disappearance, she texted her mom to ask for $15, which Sheena described as very unusual. The suspect has a lengthy criminal record which includes domestic abuse, drunk driving, and disorderly conduct. When police searched Anderson's home, they reportedly found blood on the walls and a sex dungeon in the basement. Authorities had found blood in the stairwell of Anderson's house and on a comforter, evidence that was cited in that probable cause statement. On April 18th, a passerby walking along a Lake Michigan beach found a torso and an arm which was believed to be Robinson's. Nearly a month after this discovery, a human arm, suspected to be Robinson's, was discovered along the shoreline at the Waukegan Municipal Beach. It's unclear whether the arm belongs to Robinson. The assistant district attorney described the unaliving and dismemberment of Robinson as the highest level of violence imaginable. Several dozen members of the community held a pink-out event on Maxwell Anderson's front lawn, converting it into a makeshift memorial to Robinson.
Sade is me. She's all of us. She's every little girl that wanted to belong.
It could have been any one of our daughters. She was just going on a date. Who expected it to end like this?
Last week, yellow crime scene tape stretched around the perimeter of Anderson's home. Monday night, a flood of pink. Pink tape wrapped around trees. Pink balloons filled the front porch, and pink spray paint spelled out justice for Sade.
I'm a fashion designer, and I've had this pink corduroy fabric forever with nothing to do with it because I never assumed I would do anything with pink corduroy, and what better thing to do with it?
What do you want the message to be?
That she was loved.
With balloons, posters, flowers, and stuffed animals, the community showed her love. Anderson's father also expressed condolences and sympathy for the Robinson family. In September 2024, a mural of Sade Robinson was painted on a wall near the entrance of Pizza Shuttle, a Milwaukee restaurant she had worked at. Sade's mother said her daughter was a full-time student who worked 2 jobs and was set to join the U.S. Air Force. She had been studying criminal justice and was about to graduate with an over 3.5 GPA at Milwaukee Area Technical College. The young lady was looking forward to her birthday that following month. Sade Robinson was remembered as a kind soul at the memorial service in Milwaukee. On the day that Sade would have turned 20 years old, she was eulogized at a public memorial on a Friday, remembered as a remarkable young woman who touched many different parts of the community. Reported by Drake Bentley of Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. The criminal justice student was set to graduate that next weekend. That milestone moment for her family won't happen after she was murdered and dismembered following a first date. Her early April death shook Milwaukee and other parts of the country. Prosecutors say 33-year-old Maxwell Anderson is responsible for her gruesome death. After a short night out, the local bartender and Robinson went back to his house where he killed her, dismembered her body, and disposed of the body parts across Milwaukee County, according to prosecutors. He pleaded not guilty to the charges and remains in custody on $5 million bail. Court filings indicate police met with the information on April 15th. The informant told police they were at Anderson's home on March 5th, according to court filings. Anderson showed the informant his basement. The informant said, including a plastic tarp that covered a sanitation sink, ceiling, floor, and walls. According to the informant's statement in the court filings, Anderson told the informant he intended to kill Sade Robinson, using a gun to get her down into the basement. The informant said Anderson then said he planned on shooting Robinson and then dismember her body in the room before disposing Robinson's body throughout the city. The informant also told police there were 3 saws in the basement and believed those were the saws Anderson intended to use, according to the court filings. The court records obtained Wednesday also indicate another woman went on a date with Anderson in February. That woman said Anderson asked her back to his home and believed he drugged her drink. This fuels my rage knowing that somebody else could have stopped this, and they didn't. To date, not all of Sade's body has been found. You have to be a very demonic individual to do something like this, Robinson said. Attorney Verno Swanigan, who represents Sade's mother, Sheena Scarborough, said she found out about the newly obtained court filings through news coverage. Let's check out more details.
From several other agencies worked closely to connect the dots on this investigation, starting with the discovery of the severed leg at Warnemont Park.
And so the leg was amputated from the around the hip down. As a result, the leg appeared to be that of an African-American female. Subsequently, a Milwaukee police officer who was aware of our investigation raised the possibility that the leg may be related to a missing person investigation that they were conducting.
The missing person was 19-year-old Sade Robinson, and we now know the leg discovered belonged to her. During a news conference, Sheriff Danita Ball and Milwaukee Police Chief Jeffrey Norman confirmed many of the details listed in the criminal complaint against Maxwell Anderson, including a timeline of how the investigation began.
On Wednesday, April the 4th, our investigation led to a person of interest, Maxwell Stephen Anderson.
After the severed leg was recovered, Milwaukee police discovered Sade Robinson's car had been set on fire. The arson investigation led police to the discovery of other human remains found in Milwaukee.
Video surveillance recovered from the arson investigation led investigators to search the area of 3000 West Carleena Street. Friday, April 5th, investigators located human remains in the area.
Officials say the remains found at multiple locations in Milwaukee are still being processed for official identification, although Sheriff Ball says they do not believe multiple victims are involved. Sheriff Ball also told me that search efforts in this investigation are not over.
Are you still searching for remains for Ms. Robinson?
Yes, we are.
And Sheriff Ball says right now they do not know where those remains might be. I also asked her about the reports of a sex dungeon found inside Anderson's home. Ball declined to provide any further details on that or anything else found during the search of his home. There are still many questions here, among them where Robinson was killed and how.
Now for what's tipping the scales of justice, the family and the friends of beautiful Sade Robinson are reeling as more of her remains have been recovered in connection to her murder. She was bright, always, making me feel like people at welcomed. She looked out for my baby. The least I could do was look out for her mama's baby.
We need to do whatever we can to bring her home. Until we find out what we need to find out, we just come out and you just keep pushing forward. And we let the experts come and decide, determine what they know. And we're just eyes and ears on the ground.
On Thursday, the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office revealed that more human remains were found on a remote stretch of tree-lined beach near Lake Michigan. And investigators believe those remains belong to the 19-year-old who was killed and dismembered earlier this month. 33-year-old Maxwell Anderson is charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and arson, all stemming from Robinson's death. Now, the two went out on a first date on April the 1st, and since then, Robinson's body parts have been found in several locations. For more on this case and the ongoing investigation, let's take you now to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where we find Scripps News investigative reporter Jenna Ray, who joins us live with the very latest. Jenna, good morning to you. Milwaukee police announced more human remains recently discovered, as you know. Share with us, if you would, please, the very latest on that development.
That's exactly right, Julie, and it's a case that's really been rocking the community here in Milwaukee and beyond. Today is the first time that sheriff's deputies are telling us they're actually going to be getting in Lake Michigan and in the water, and crews will use sonar to search Lake Michigan and the shoreline for other missing body parts. As you mentioned earlier, the latest update came in yesterday morning after the investigators found her phone in several locations across the entire county, but the specific location yesterday was not one of those locations where her phone was pinged, so it's still unclear how those body parts got there. As you mentioned, the person in custody and who's now charged is Maxwell Anderson, and he was taken into custody pretty early into this investigation.
Right. Jenna, I wanted to ask you if you and your team there on the ground have learned anything more about this guy, as we've been really trying to dig into his past and looking at what we've been able to see from his record. It didn't seem like there was anything in his past that would really raise any red flags.
The only thing that raised some red flags for us were a couple of convictions of disorderly conduct. So he did plead guilty to 3 separate convictions and charges of disorderly conduct. He also has a few convictions involving intimidating a witness as well. He was actually very well known in the community here in Milwaukee, and that's what we've been learning over the last 3 weeks since Maxwell Anderson was taken into custody. So he was first taken into custody with no charges, so he was being able to be held by police for just a specific amount of time. And we've learned he was heavily involved in the restaurant community here in Milwaukee. He worked at several popular bars, restaurants, and even concert venues in the city. Again, we mentioned those previous court records show that he had pleaded guilty to separate counts of disorderly conduct, and that's where that kind of tracks back to the now charges that he's facing. You mentioned intentional homicide, that charge. He's also facing the charge of mutilating a corpse, as well as arson, as investigators believe he actually burned Sade's car with her clothes that she was wearing that night of their first date.
Oh, it's so devastating, as you know. Scripps News Milwaukee investigative journalist Jenna Ray, thank you so much for this information. We hope to talk to you again about this case very soon.
Thank you.
I want to turn to my guest now, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Daryl Cohen, somebody who is no stranger to high-profile cases. You've represented some very high-profile people. This case, it's captured the hearts of people around the world. We have this, young woman. I mean, she's a baby. She's 19, doing nothing wrong, going out on a date, trying to find love with a guy, and then this. Your thoughts on the prosecution, how solid this case looks, and then the family. What, if anything, they can do at this point?
Well, let's start with the family. It's very difficult, and the words are easy for me to say, but it's not easy for the family to do. Be strong. If you feel like you need to cry, get it out. Mourn and look for a result of a conviction for murder. He's not yet charged with murder, but murder in the courtroom. So what else do you do? You're looking, as we see it now, it appears that the evidence is good. I don't see where previous convictions that he had were anything other than perhaps intoxication and just raising Cain. I don't see that as a red flag. So this is something that was, I would say, was a PFA, picked from air. It just happened, and maybe there were no previous watch outs, no even caution flags. There are people that do evil, and it appears that he is one of those people, for whatever the reason, committed a horrendous crime. And not only did he kill her, apparently, but dismembering her just beyond belief, something that's almost impossible to talk about.
Right, Daryl. It really is. It's the unthinkable, yet we know it happened.
Maxwell Anderson appears to be copying an urban legend, like he wanted to act out a copycat crime, which is a criminal act that's modeled after or inspired by a previous crime. People who mimic crimes seen in the media, especially in news and violent movies, are more likely to have prior criminal records, severe mental health problems, or histories of violence. Some crazed lunatics will go far to make it reality, just as Maxwell has done, to possibly multiple women, and the case is still ongoing. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you're new here, consider subscribing for more true crime stories, urban legends, mysteries, and the paranormal. Have a good one,